Hi guys, so today what I wanted to share is just my experiences with recurrent miscarriage, just because it's one of those subjects that, like if you're going through it or you've been through it, it's nice to know that it's not necessarily nice to know that other people have been through it because I don't think it's anything that you would ever wish upon anybody. But it's just nice to know that unfortunately, that you're not the only one. Not unfortunately, sorry. It's nice to know that you're not the only one. But it is unfortunate that anybody has to go through it. So my journey with recurrent miscarriage started in 2011 in May. I had had PCOS from the time I was 16 and always knew in the back of my mind that I was going to struggle with conceiving. And I'd always told my husband this. We met when I was 21 and we got married 3 years later. And then we just, had waited and decided, we weren't ready to have children yet, etc. And when I was 28, we decided that, yep, now would be a good time. In hindsight, I have no idea why I waited, but nonetheless, that was what we did. So we then always knew, as I said, my AF is always irregular for me. And so I'd always prepared myself and him for the idea that this was going to be a long road for us. In my mind, I always thought conceiving would be my challenge. I always thought that I would, that if I fell pregnant, that would be a miracle, and the child that I was, going to then subsequently take home and cuddle forever. And that was the one of the hardest things about my first miscarriage, is that having always prepared myself for difficulties conceiving, which in itself is harrowing and, exceptionally hard, to then go on to miscarry after a pregnancy, a BFP was, it really was a double blow. And so what happened with me is in 2011 in May, I had had spotting for about 12 days, which was unusual. And TMI here, it was brown and scanty and just not fluid-like or anything like that. So I decided to do a home pregnancy test because we hadn't been trying but hadn't been preventing. And, you get excited and you buy the tests, and we had them. I had them in my top drawer. So I did one early in the morning. It came back positive. It was very, very faint, but I knew it wasn't an evaporation line because I'd seen many of those before, thinking they were something. And yeah, I went to the doctor to get my levels tested, and we were absolutely shocked, bewildered, overjoyed, thinking about our future, thinking this was it for us. It was going to be our baby. And even though I had been spotting, like logic and sense goes out the window, and it gives way to this whole new idea of you and your husband and your life, or your partner, whatever, and your life. And we were so excited but cautious, obviously. We went to the doctor. My levels was 29. I should have been about 5 weeks, and the doctor told us, obviously, that this pregnancy was not going to continue. And then that night I started to miscarry, and TMI again. I lost large clots and tissue for probably 2 days. And then after that I completely shut down. I was devastated, I was scared, and I didn't want to try again. So the months went on and we just didn't really do anything as such. I also went through a fair bit of time blaming myself, which is seriously the worst thing you can do because, there's nothing that nobody, you never do anything to cause these things. So it's just not even worth going there with everything else that you're going through. And I wish I hadn't been so hard on myself at the time. But I then, in January of 2012, I had another positive pregnancy test. And this time we were really, really worried and scared. I wasn't spotting or anything, but we decided to stay at home and test for 2 weeks on our own. And I'd test every morning. I'd get up and test, and we'd be excited to see the line getting darker, and it was fabulous. But still, I wasn't ready to go to the doctor and get my bloods run just in case. And then I finally did, and my levels came back at 1,000 and something, maybe 1,080. And then I had another test 2 days later, and on the morning of the day that I was to get my results, I started spotting. And so we were thrown back into this, thinking, my gosh, why is this happening? It's happening again. And it was devastating after being so excited and thinking that first miscarriage was maybe just a one-off situation, which in so many cases it is. And then, we ended up having a miscarriage again at 6.5 weeks. And that was at home, and it was physically very painful and long, 3 days worth of the same kinds of cramping and discomfort, and a lot of passing a lot of tissues and things like that. And I was sworn off the idea of TTCing after that, which, was or wasn't, the greatest thing for me to have done, because I just felt very negative about the situation. I was scared. And at that point, I knew, though, it was time for us to go and see a fertility specialist and get some help. But before I did that, what I wanted to do was, because of my PCOS, I'm typical PCOS, always been heavier, always carried more weight than I should, and I decided to lose, I lost over 40 pounds, which I've explained in other videos. And so I went into the fertility specialist's office, knowing that I'd done a fair amount of what I needed to do, so that I wasn't, kind of sent away to lose weight, which I assumed I would be. Or I also didn't want to hear somebody say it could have been because of my weight, because then I talk about, almost blaming yourself, which is not helpful. And, you sort of, I don't know, I just didn't want to hear that I had to, that, my weight could have affected it. In the end, no fertility specialist or obstetrician or anybody has ever said it has anything to do with weight. So that was just an illogical thing that I was thinking, because, your emotions are high, basically. So anyway, I lost weight, went in to see the fertility specialist. She was very confident that, there shouldn't be anything that sort of really deters us at that point from trying, but that she did a whole lot of tests. I had probably about 10 vials of blood taken, and they tested everything from antibodies to my genetics and my husband's sort of the balance of our chromosomes and things like that. And they also tested for lupus antibodies and thyroid function and a million other things. And all of it came back negative. It was all fine. And then I went and had a saline contrast ultrasound, where they infuse a saline into your uterus to have a look for fibroids and polyps and any irregularities, and that was fine as well. So I was given a clean bill of health. I had my sugars all tested, blood sugars and everything. Clean bill of health, no issues there, no insulin resistance either. But I did ask to be put on metformin just to see whether that would assist me. So I took 500 milligrams a day, and I took 25 milligrams of clomid to bring on ovulation, because my cycles are always irregular, and we got a BFP again. And at this point, I got my BFP Easter Saturday and started spotting Easter Monday, and the clinic wasn't going to be open till Easter Tuesday. So I rang the clinic and said, I've started spotting. We went in, had some bloods run, had a chat, and then waited for the results that came back positive. Progesterone was 110, HCG. I didn't get that result, but she said, you're pregnant and the levels will be rising. Let's check them in 2 days. So checked them in 2 days. They'd tripled by that time. Another 2 days, tripled again. I'd still continued light spotting, but it was on and off. And but she, there is always sometimes in pregnancy where spotting is okay. So I was sent away and was to come back on at about 5.5 weeks because I continued spotting. So I went back at 5.5 weeks and had a scan, and there was a gestational sac and what the fertility specialist thought was the fetal yolk sac. And so she said it still could be early, go away and come back. And we kept having blood tests, everything was fine. Went back at, what was it, 6 weeks, 3 days, I think. And there was a heartbeat and yolk sac and fetal pole or whatever all those things are. Everything was in check and everything looked great. So went away, kept having my bloods run, they were fine. And then I passed a little bit of tissue and I was concerned. It was very little, probably the size of a little fingernail, but I was really worried about it. So we went back in and had another scan. Now my bladder was really full at this scan, and so it was pushing on my uterus, and it pushed my uterus and everything down on a weird angle. And so while we could see everything was going on and the baby was fine, the heartbeat monitor couldn't pick up a consistent beat the whole time. It was just the actual monitor was dropping out. So I was sent 24 hours later to a specialist scanning centre, and there was an OB there that did my scan, and he said everything looks great. Looks like you're at this point you have a less than 2% miscarriage chance of miscarriage, so more than likely everything will be fine. And he said we'll see you later in your pregnancy. So I was relieved and happy, and booked my first OB appointment for 9 weeks. And at this point, I think I was 7 weeks and 3 days, I think. And so a week and a bit later, I was off to see the OB. So got ready for that appointment. I remember speaking to my mum the night before, and she was saying, how are you feeling? And I said, oh, much better. The nausea stopped, everything stopped. And I just hadn't for 1 second thought it could be because things weren't going well, because my bleeding had actually stopped completely by that time. And so I went to my first OB appointment, and she did her evaluation. We chatted and got to know each other, and then she did her examination and brought the ultrasound machine in. And at this point I'd seen the heartbeat that many times, and I knew what I was looking for, and I knew that I couldn't see it. And she was very silent, and so without thinking what I was saying, I said to her, is there a heartbeat? And at that point I wasn't actually registering. I think I was in shock, and she said I don't think so. And I turned to my husband and I said, I'm so sorry. And at that point, I didn't cry. I was in complete shock, as I said, and I felt numb, and I just felt so devastated for him. And I was just it was awful. And my husband had met me at the OB's office from work. So we had separate cars. We lived half an hour from there. So I had to drive home, and that's when it set in a lot more. And I just remember crying and crying and crying on the way home. I don't know how I drove. Probably wasn't the safest thing to have done in that position, but we then had to go and have the scan confirmed back at the specialist scanning centre, just to confirm everything. And sadly, it was so that the baby had stopped growing at 7 weeks 5 days, 2 days after that first scan. And 24 hours later, I had a D&C, and the genetic testing that we chose to have done came back with balanced chromosomes, so everything seemed to be fine from what the testing indicated. And so we're back in a position where we're about to start trying again. And there hasn't been any findings for me. I had a hysteroscopy and D&C 8 weeks after my miscarriage D&C, and the results from that again were there was nothing to be found. I've seen an immunologist as well, to get different perspectives on different things that can sabotage pregnancies, and all the tests that were done were clear there as well. So we're going in as an unexplained case, and I'm hoping for the best, But more than anything, I just wanted to discuss this openly. It's healing for me to talk about it, but it's also, I think, for me, seeing that other people have sadly, I'm not the only one that's been through it, which is devastating and sad, brings me a feeling of community. So if anybody else has been put in this category, I really do wish you all the very best, and please feel free to make a comment or make contact if you ever need to talk to anybody. And I know what you're feeling. I know what some of what you're going through, and I appreciate you all for watching this today. So I will touch base soon, and thanks again.